Thanks for having me, Dave. Dave invited me to come up about last night as I was giving him a ride up to the city. Redis, I think most everyone knows Redis, so probably most of you have actually deployed Redis or use it in some way, shape, or form. And in fact, when most of you deploy Redis, you kind of look at it like this. As a cache, as an in-memory service. A few of you never get beyond that. Many people do get beyond that and look at some of the other data structures like hashes and lists and things like the bit fields or hyperlog logs. But Redis is undergoing a lot of changes. We're building a lot of functionality into Redis to do more things than just in-memory caching. So to do persistent data, to do time series. So this is a way of adding functionality to either cache data, speed up computations with microservices. We're also adding containers, container support for Kubernetes, all the things that you look for in a modern deployment. And one of the big changes that has come about in recent years, and this is available today as a 4.0 in open source Redis, is the module system. The module system lets you build your own logic into Redis, so that you can use Redis as a server framework or a data framework. So you can build your own data types. You can add commands to do things that you want to do that Redis doesn't provide command for, or even add entirely new types or systems. And in fact, I'm going to show a little quick demo of what a new data type that's been added to Redis, which is statistical models. So if you're trying to do ML, you can actually do the evaluation of your statistical models in ML. Redis started off, and most people start off with Redis as a cache, but now you also have all these other things like neural networks, Redis ML to do statistical models, Redis search. So all of this is available. It's available open source. You can pull it into your applications, and you can even deploy it with Kubernetes. So if you want to give all this a try, here's a couple of options. If you've got Minikube installed, here's basically an image out there that my colleague Itamar Haber has produced that includes all of the open source Redis modules. So you can try all the different ways of using Redis that are kind of new and have evolved over the last about year and a half. The whole module system was actually something that was proposed back in Redis 1.0 and has taken about 4 releases to get right. And so, Dave, I'll hand you this. Oh, wait, actually, I should probably hold on to this. I was going to do, since we've got about a minute left, got a little quick demo to show people. This is an example of actually building a statistical model based on random forest. So basically, you have a bunch of decision trees that are grouped together, and you take the vote of all the decision trees. And this particular set of decision trees was learned from the Titanic survivor data. So this is a classic data set, a little macabre, but you can actually figure out the features of if you are likely or not to survive the Titanic. And so I'll just run it here to actually set up my trees. So this script, it's a little Python script, is connecting to a Docker container running locally on my machine that's running open source Redis and has loaded all the various open source Redis modules to extend Redis functionality beyond just caching. It's actually running that image that I showed you in the previous slide. Now here you can see a bunch of rules that are really intended for machine-to-machine communication to set up a bunch of decision trees so that we can see if, when we run the predict script, we have 2 gentlemen actually that we're looking at. We have John, who's in his mid-30s, male, has children and a family, and poor Matthew, who is a younger child, a boy of, I think it's about 6. And you can see the features. But basically, if you look at all the various rules, there's 2 trees that think John will survive the Titanic, and no trees that think poor Matthew will survive the Titanic. So we predict for John that he will actually survive, but poor Matthew will not. And so this is just a really simple example of how you can bring Redis into your services to do things like machine learning, to do search, all that other wonderful stuff. I thought it'd be fun to just come up and talk to people and introduce some changes that are coming on in service that's very popular, that's frequently used with building out many microservices, caching and deployment. So thank you very much. And does anyone have any questions?
I thought they said women and children first.
So the question was, I thought they said women and children first. So it turns out gender or sex, if you're female, you are almost guaranteed to survive. So women and children first actually was very true. There's actually a very cool, which this isn't really related to Redis, but it's actually a really cool, fascinating page if you search for it. I don't have it on the top of my head, that does a statistical analysis of this data and then finds back the stories, the actual human stories for the outlying data point. Like women had a very, very high statistical probability of surviving the Titanic, as did men of upper economic classes. And there's actually, if you go through the data, you can find some outliers, and there's some fascinating, really human stories behind why people who should have a statistically high probability of surviving actually didn't. Look it up, and it's actually also from the perspective of learning data structure, or not data structures, but data science and applied statistics and things like pandas. It really has that kind of interesting vibe. Any other questions?
Okay, all right.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you very much.